the RTÉ Rugby World Cup podcast, sponsored by Bank of Ireland.
Hello and welcome along to the RTÉ Rugby World Cup podcast. We are just a couple of days out from Ireland's Pool B decider against Scotland. Our second podcast of the week here on RTÉ Rugby. We had James Downey and Rory Lawson looking ahead to the game on Tuesday. So if you haven't caught that, you can go back and listen to it as well. Today, Bernard Jackman with us as usual on a Thursday. How are things, Birch?
Oh, good, thanks. How was Tours?
It's been fantastic. We're getting out of here today, heading up to Paris. This is the last bit of it. I've only done a week here. A lot of the journalists have done 4, maybe even 5 weeks at this stage here, and God, it's an absolutely fantastic spot. Players all seem to love it. And I might double back on a little bit later on when we're talking about the environments that teams are in and things like that, because it's interesting to see now that they're going in towards the bubble of Paris. Because I do also want to welcome on our other guest, Dan Leavy is with us. Dan, welcome to the podcast. Big day for you, not just because you get to share a spot on the podcast with myself and Bert. You got a bit of news in the business.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me on. Doing our second release of Own now at 10 a.m. today. So it's a product of a lot of hard work, a lot of months of graft. But yeah, we're super excited to release our second liquid and our second volume of it. So first one went really well, sold out 1,100 bottles in 20 hours. So we're hoping this one goes even quicker. So there we go. Ownwhiskey.com.
Did you have a tipple of it, Birch?
Yeah, I have. I got a couple of bottles of it, so I haven't drank them all yet. I'm going through it slowly. I don't do special occasions for me, but no, it's lovely, really good.
Celebrate a World Cup.
We'll be drinking
Saturday. That'll be the end of the 2 bottles if we get there. Yeah.
Dan, you were also at the Ryder Cup over the weekend. How did that go? Before we get into things,
stalker. Yeah, it was deadly. It was amazing to be over there. First of all, I was a little bit worried after Europe went 4 points up in the first round and the first day, but credit to the US, they actually fought back quite well and they made a real competition on the last day. I was following Larry around at the end, hoping that we get another Irishman to bring home the Ryder Cup, but he got his half in the end, and it was awesome. It was really like this. It's so different to a rugby atmosphere insofar as you can't hear people chirping and shouting at the players in a rugby environment because it's so loud and they're quite far away from the pitch. But they're like the Ryder Cup, I couldn't believe how close people actually were to the golfers and the kind of party atmosphere and all the heckling and stuff. It was funny. It was very good.
Have you been to much golf, Birch?
No, I'm not a golf. No. I went to the Irish Open years ago, but Cheltenham or Royal Ascot or Aintree or Leopardstown or Punchestown was my team.
Well, when Ryder Cup comes to it there, I'm sure you'll get into
it. Yeah, probably I'm a bit of an event junkie. I'll try and be a bandwagoner there.
He'll be working on it somehow. He'll be working on it. He'll be doing podcasting.
Listen,
we'll see. I might quit the golf market there.
We'll get into the rugby because Birch, it's been a strange week. I found up until I think the weekend, everyone was full of confidence. The South Africa game had gone brilliantly. The result was what we wanted, and it's gone from talking about getting first place in the pool, and all of a sudden these permutations are kind of cropping up in people's heads, and we're thinking not so much what Ireland need just to top the pool, but it's the thought of what can they lose by, what can't they lose by, and what are your own confidence levels like at this stage of the week?
I'm confident. I think the only thing that would jeopardize our chance of winning is if we're overconfident, and I don't see that happening with this group. I think they'll see enough in Scotland to make them very wary, and know they're going to have to be on the money defensively. They'll see some things that South Africa did that really put the squeeze on Scotland. I think up front we've managed to dominate them physically over the last couple of years, and the teams who have got into trouble against Scotland, I feel, haven't really gone after them. They try to just kind of play their normal game, and Scotland have caught England a couple of times, they've caught Wales, they've caught France, but in that manner. Whereas when we've played them, we've been really consistent in terms of being able to to dominate them and take away any of their flair or any of their energy from getting the ball into those wider channels. So that's a challenge. I think it's more up to Scotland to adapt and show something different they haven't shown before. And obviously, I was pretty disappointed with Scotland against South Africa because it looked like they had no plan to try and hurt that blitz. Or they had a plan, but it was obviously a plan that didn't work. Whereas at least against South Africa, from an Irish point of view, even though we didn't hurt them, you could see that they put a lot of thought into how we would, and they'll have learned a lot from that if we end up playing South Africa again, because we're going to have to add other layers to it to be able to hurt them. So that's the thing with Scotland. Are they going to just say, look, this is what we are? We're a team who play a lot off 10. Finn's going to give us those opportunities, and even though South Africa should have stand, that's going to work against Ireland. Or are they going to actually change it up a little bit? Because we didn't see a lot, and there's no need for them to change too much against Tonga, Romania, because if they do get the ball into their back three, they're unbelievable players. I mean, they can win one-on-one duels. So that's going to be a fascinating side of it. But I'm not overly concerned, to be honest. I think this team deserve confidence from the consistency they've shown and ability just to get it going.
Yeah, like Dan, I mean, just they've won 16 games in a row. There's no reason to expect why the Irish players would all of a sudden be tensing up and getting nervous this week.
Yeah, I actually find it really interesting how the whole rhetoric has changed from Ireland being in control of the group to being the ones under pressure, having not played a game. So I think that's pretty interesting. Obviously, that's a bit of Rassie doing Rassie things. And I think even like Hamish Watson coming out and saying no pressure on us. But like, look, I think the Irish team, as you've alluded to there, they've just been remarkably consistent. I think they're like, for some reason, 2 weeks prep for a game this week has turned into like a hindrance and something bad for Ireland. But look, I know the guys, we know what it's like in camp. They'll be super dialed in. Obviously go full noise, and hopefully they can get ahead. I think Scotland's will obviously come out of the blocks quick. They'll probably look back to the last time they beat Ireland was when it was in Murrayfield. It was 2017, and they just started super fast. Got out. I think they were 20 points up at halftime. And I think Ireland will look at that and make sure that isn't the opportunity that they give and make it a dogfight. So start well, clinical start, get the scoreboard ticking, and if they have a bit of breathing space, which hopefully they will towards the end of the game, they can start to swap guys out and get them on to the next game.
Like you mentioned, Scotland in that 2017 game, fast start. And Birch, one of the things I was thinking recently, it's been a while since we've actually seen Ireland make a particularly fast start. Probably early rounds of the Six Nations, Wales, France, and Italy in those games where they really, really came out flying it. And against Scotland and against England in the Six Nations, took them a little while to get into things. And even through the warm-up games and pretty much all of the World Cup games so far, they've slowly built their way into a match. Do you think it's, I don't want to say deliberate that they're not kind of coming out fast, but do you think that they are almost deliberately just kind of working their way through matches at the moment?
No, I don't think so. I think they'll be frustrated with that. And I think...
Yeah, is it just a coincidence that it hasn't happened yet?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and you've seen them in the past kind of have a real mindset about laying down a bit of a gauntlet and like, so from, winning the toss and deciding to receive the kickoff and then attacking from deep. They were doing that last year and just basically saying, look, we're not afraid to play against you. This is what we're going to do. And I think they've been frustrated with some of their accuracy. Like, I think at the start against South Africa, obviously, they wanted to have that fast start and kick to the corner and, obviously didn't execute it. So the mindset is there, but the execution hasn't been. Likewise, as you said, back to the England game, etc. They were very frustrated after that win, even though it was obviously a huge win in terms of it was a grand slam at the end of it, but they were very frustrated, disappointed with the content of the performance. So I think to be of no better game to do that. You just want to snuff out any hope the Scots have, because for sure they're going to be trying to find ways of believing that they can beat Ireland, and of course they can beat Ireland because it's going to be a competitive match. But realistically, if Ireland were to get ahead of them, get 10 points ahead of them, I think it'd be very difficult for Scotland then to go chase the game, because any errors that they have will be magnified and punished by Ireland. So if there's ever a game we want to get that, and obviously leading in, if we can qualify, that could be key against the Blacks as well. So yeah, it's definitely something I think that will be very much on their mind.
And I think just to come in on that as well, it's obviously, it is frustrating, but it's definitely harder to break down teams at the start of a game. Everyone's full energy, they're fired up, but this is basically a do or die for both teams. So they'll have their plans in place. And obviously, as the game goes on, people start to get a bit more tired. We figure out the kind of chinks in their armor and what's going to work against them, and what their defensive plan is looking like. So it definitely is. Obviously, everyone wants a fast start, but it is definitely harder to break down teams super motivated at the very start of the game. That'll come later on, and I think that'll happen this weekend as well. Obviously, they're going to look to try and get that fast start, but I think where the real damage will be done is kind of the last 20, 30 minutes. And, we'll see how well Scotland will cope as kind of the bench players start coming on and people start getting fatigued and the gaps get wider in the defence.
Yeah, and like we've really seen that actually in like just the South Africa game as an example, with what the impact the bench brought with Conor Murray and Ian Henderson. In terms of the permutations, Dan, I'd be curious. Like there are a handful of, obviously the main one is win or draw, Ireland go through. It's a fairly simple one there, but you do have a couple of bonus point. Yeah, you do have a couple of bonus point situations where Ireland just need to be wary of what they need. I'd be curious to get your opinion. Back when you were playing, maybe there might have been a few Heineken Cup occasions where there were X, Y's and Z permutations on final rounds or second last rounds. Would you as a player have it in your head, just knowing what you need without getting bogged down or dwelling on the finer details, but just if you end up in certain situations in a match to have that prepared? Or is it kind of designated to maybe 3 or 4 leaders on the pitch, the decision makers on the day?
Yeah, it usually would be designated. I think the messaging for the team is win first. Like if you're going in and saying we need 1 bonus point here or whatever, we can go through. That's all wrong. So the team will be win first, but you've obviously got your kind of spine of the team, your 9, 10 captains, second, whoever's calling the line out, JR probably will be acutely kind of, as things get later on, they'll know what they need if it gets to that stage. But definitely win first messaging is kind of what you need.
Birch, the notion of this Ireland, Scotland going into cahoots to knock out South Africa, for some reason it just seems to have picked up legs over the last few days. It's probably just nonsense noise from South Africa. I think Mike Cash summed it up perfectly yesterday when he was asked about it. And he said, why would we want to lose by 21 points to Scotland? I mean, when you look at the things that are needed for both sides to end up in that situation, it's actually easier to just go out and win the bloody game, isn't it?
Does anyone know where this started? Like it's I got a WhatsApp from a guy I actually really respect, and I was like, what are you talking? Like this was last Sunday. He's South African, to be fair, and he goes, the rumor is, and I was like, this is bizarre. It's like it's clean off. So I thought that was the end of it, but now it's actually starting to get some traction. It's funny. I think Razzie following just the IRFU. He used to follow 0 people, and this week he's following the IRFU and Scotland as if like he's watching to see. He's brilliant, in fairness. He's very, very funny. He's yeah, and it's just built up with South African fans. And I think some of our fans are media. We're not painting ourselves in glory either, but South African fans love a conspiracy theory, and but it's totally like it's preposterous. Really, you know what I mean? It's insane. There's no one in any squad thinking of anything like that. You know? It's
pretty embarrassing. Like, if people, whoever's engaging in this kind of stuff just needs to have like, this is like a 12-year-old like playground kind of. It baffles me, honestly. I couldn't believe that people are suggesting that.
Because it's also such a specific situation. So what? both sides have to score 4 tries. Scotland would need to win by 21 plus. I mean, if Ireland are to lose in 4 score tries, you're talking they're scoring 20 plus. Tag on another 20, whatever. Scotland would have to be hitting close to 50. I mean, if Scotland were to beat Ireland 55-28, I think there would be an inquiry called by World Rugby. Listen, we'll move on to more serious matters.
Yeah, bro, like proper stuff.
I don't want to talk about this anymore.
The Six Nations between the sides, or Six Nations meeting between the sides back in March, Birch. Obviously Ireland ground their way through it, and particularly with the challenges they had in the second half of the injuries. Scotland did show in the first half of that game how dangerous they can be and how much they can stretch Ireland.
Yeah, but absolutely, you know, they are a dangerous team, but like I think Ireland's defence, and I'd love to hear Dan's thoughts on it. I mean, it seems to be going to a new level, and obviously the South Africa game was a very unique match where you were going to get tested. But I actually thought we didn't just get tested around a ruck, like sometimes can against the box. They actually tried to play a little bit, and they weren't like, they've got dangerous runners, and we snuffed them out pretty well. And even when they brought the power game from Delande, okay, we got bumped a couple of times, but we scrambled really well. So that's the reason I think I'm even more comfortable going into this game, is that Ireland defensively look to be a lot better. The only question mark is, if there ever has been a weakness in our defense, it's been sometimes in those wide channels. We have tended to get a little bit narrow, obviously against Italy, in the warm-up games, etc. And Jacob Stockdale got blamed for that because he missed a tackle. But there has been times, now it hasn't been evident in this Rugby World Cup, because in fairness, like, the only real challenge we had from an attacking point of view was South Africa, and obviously everybody would have been incredibly aware of the need to have a big defensive performance and in it. But yeah, I think that our defense is in a very good place in terms of discipline, in terms of aggression, in terms of selection around the breakdown and spacing, etc. But I don't know what you think, Dan, and I haven't watched it from your side.
Yeah, 100%. You know, I think I've mentioned it previously. I think what Ireland have now, which is really, really important, is kind of jackal threats throughout the team and all over the pitch. So if you're Scotland and you're going to try and play wide and get the ball to Doohan and Darcy Graham if he's playing, you know, if there's good tackles put in there, there is really good opportunities, because it's tough to resource those breakdowns in the wider channels. So I think it'll be key, obviously, Mac and Lowy to be able to make those tackles. But then you even get Gary and Bundy near the ball then as well, and they're difficult men to shift over the ball. So, yeah, it's one of these things, you know, they have some really, really X-factor players, particularly out wide. So if they can get them to space, you know, who knows what'll happen. And also, Finn Russell is probably one of the best in the world at crossfield kicks. His ability to kind of take it to the line, sit down defenders, and step to the side and get these balls away. So that could hurt Ireland, definitely. But again, look, the guys have had 2 weeks to prep for this. They'll have had their Finn Russell running around and training with the red bib on, trying everything. So they will be expecting, you know, the unexpected in a certain regard. But again, look, I think when you play against Scotland, I think the main thing is up front. I think to deny them go forward ball in the pack, to deny them set piece ball, strangle them there a little bit, and then Finn Russell's a different player if he's playing on his heels with go forward. I think arguably probably the best 10 in the world going forward. But it is very difficult for a player like him, kind of mercurial player like him, it's not impossible, but it's harder to do on the way back. So yeah, I think that's kind of the blueprint, really.
Yeah, and like there's plenty of Finn Russell obviously is brilliant, but at this stage there is quite a lot of familiarity with those players and Finn Russell, Birch, like consistently playing against Scotland in Six Nations and 2 World Cups in a row. And then also, just for example, a lot of those Leinster players have come up against him twice in the last season in the Champions Cup as well. Yeah,
I don't think they would fear him to like other opposition would. I think the issue for Scotland is, even though they've got, like, you know, Hugh Jones, Tuipulotu, a variety of good nines, you know, they shouldn't be just a single threat attack, but they kind of are. they kind of are or have shown that. And that's what I'm fascinated to see if they vary it up. I think there was an interesting dynamic between Gregor and Finn that happened over the last 7 or 8 months, where if you remember, Finn, I mean, she wasn't picked in November, so theoretically he wasn't. Townsend said he's not in the top 3 out halves that they have. Injury circumstances evolved, and next thing he's back in the team, and they get a couple of good performances and good wins. And Gregor, who wasn't going to get recontracted back in January, February, they were talking to Leon McDonald and others. They suddenly then, re-signed Gregor, and I felt that now Finn has maybe more power than Gregor, or certainly seems to be that way. And so I think it's going to be hard for Gregor to take Finn out of the firing line as such, because that's how they got the most success. That's how they got to 5th in the world, to be fair, is kind of playing through Finn. But I think from an Irish point of view, it kind of gives you a much easier focus on how to shut it down. And I think when he gets pressurized, collectively, like anybody, it's very difficult to be as elaborate or as ambitious as he likes to be. And then they get caught a little bit in those 15s or within the 15s, and then it's easier. Then you can go after the breakdown, etc. So it's going to be interesting. Like, obviously, I think Ireland will have a big focus on getting their attacking game going, because obviously we didn't do it against South Africa. But I think the key to victory for us is just snuffing them out, and even taking our points if we have to, just to get that win.
Bernard, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Scotland back row.
Yeah.
Where you going?
I don't know. I think that I think the issue is more in their front 5, but individually, they're all good players, but certainly collectively, I don't know if they have it. I mean, what selection wise, where do you go? I mean, you bring Fagerson in.
Dempsey or Fagerson is the first question, but then they have Richie, the captain, then Watson, and Darge.
Richie got a bad bang, didn't he? Is he? I would say, from an Irish point of view, I would probably prefer Watson didn't play. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think he adds to it.
Yeah, he's an X factor, isn't he? Yeah.
Dempsey, I think Dempsey's got a little bit more collision in him.
Yeah.
Than Fagerson, but Fagerson's a worker. And then obviously Richie, is the captain. Do you rate them?
Yeah, I do. I think Watson is a super player. I think he's obviously pretty banged up. He gets a lot of big injuries. That's just the way he plays. I actually really like Darge as well as a player. I've played against him a good few times. He's young, but he's like pretty dynamic, and so it depends on what tack they want. But Richie, he's obviously their captain and their leader and stuff, but if you want dynamism and if you want kind of more X factor, a bit more explosive back row, threats wise, I probably wouldn't play Richie. Now that's obviously then the captaincy would probably go to Russell anyway. But it's just interesting. I saw Andy Good say that Darge and Watson have to play if you're coming up against Ireland, and I thought it was a pretty interesting take.
Yeah, I would agree that if they're going to win this game, they probably need to make brave calls, and you need to get as much dynamism and much athleticism into that pack as you can. Yeah. And they're limited enough to what they can do in the front row, but they certainly, their back row is probably the back row of the best individuals. But I think our back row would match up pretty well.
While we're on the pack, line out for both sides is going to be a big factor. Scotland had massive issues against Ireland last time in the Six Nations and have had issues for a while. Ireland, though, have had issues as well, and we might focus on them to begin with. The other day, Birch, we were speaking to a couple of the players, and Dan Sheehan, for example, was saying there's no major fix needed, no major surgery. It's just about simplifying things, like not making a big deal about it necessarily, and just getting the reps through and getting comfortable with things. Is it actually sometimes just as simple as that?
Yeah, 100%. And the simpler you can make it to a certain extent in terms of whatever menu you go in with this weekend and just have a real clear plan, have a real good understanding of how they defend. Like, it's not the same threat that South Africa present in the air, to be fair. And the best example of that is the fact that we could win the ball exclusively with Josh Renner-Fleer thrown in the second half. So like, fair play to Josh, he threw well, but they're not the same as the box. And also, I think you will have had a really good conversation between Paul O'Connell and Mike Catt this week around, whether having the possession is more important, which I think probably against Scotland you can afford to win it at the front a little bit. Whereas obviously against South Africa, you're really slow to win at the front because it's very hard to get back to the gain line then. Whereas I think Ireland will say, look, at just having the ball, even if we don't damage him on first phase, we'll get him on phase 6 or 7. So I think it'll be easier for whoever's playing hooker, whoever's calling lineouts this weekend. And it'd just be a great time to just have that really sharp, snappy lineup performance, and it's bedded in then, because the players will be frustrated answer questions about it. The players will be frustrated having decent weeks and then it's just not coming together, on match day. So I've full confidence in everyone involved in that they can fix it.
Yeah, I think they'll probably take a couple of more pragmatic options early on as well, just get themselves into the game. Obviously, there's a lot of question marks the last 2 weeks about it. So, probably like could go to a couple of shortened lineouts, just take tempos quickly and get the ball in, because I think one of the keys is hold the ball. Again, same with what Bert's just said there. This isn't the box defense here. If they can hold the ball, bring them 2 phases, I think they should do pretty well.
One thing that popped into my head yesterday, and it was when Dan Sheehan was speaking, and feel free to tell me if this is just a stupid idea. It was just something that popped into my head, and you two would know a lot more about this. But
if you ask that question, it's a strong chance. Go on.
Yeah, it is. It is. Okay, keep going.
Do you ever hear the phrase, there's no such thing as a stupid question? Well, we're going to find out now. No, but Sheehan, for example, he was talking about while he was out injured, not being able to throw for a little while and just missing out on getting those reps. And I just was wondering, for the last while, Ireland have probably had inconsistent selection at hooker, just down to injuries, where Dan Sheehan's has obviously missed a bit of time and missed a game in the Six Nations. Ronan Keller has had had his injury issues as well. So you've had the 3 of those hookers kind of swapping a lot of time. Throw in Tom Stewart as well for one of the warm-up games. Does that have an impact on just getting all the little timings right around the line out of just not so much the throwing itself, but being able to, the jumpers and lifters judging their timing off the throws as well? Do those little inconsistencies have much of an effect?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they have a massive effect. In fairness, I think
so. It wasn't a stupid question.
No, geez, I was very impressed. I didn't know where you were going to go with that. No, of course it does. And you look at the makeup of the pack for, even though we went strong, Joe McCarthy's playing, etc. The Bayonne game, obviously, Tom Stewart starts. And it was a tough night. The weather conditions were poor, etc. But yeah, we don't normally see this, because kind of going into November, the team are settled. They normally are settled for the first game, and then there's mass changes for that weaker game, and then the third game, the first team come back in. Six Nations, it's pretty consistent. You have your first choice team, maybe make a few changes for Italy, and a summer tour. There's not as much scrutiny on it. But there's probably more change in that. But this World Cup, up till now, there has been a change, particularly with hooker, with Dan and Ronan having injuries, etc. So I think now it'll settle, and it'll be Dan and Ronan, or Ronan and Dan, all the way through, barring injury, and obviously you'll have a settled 4-pack as well. So that could have been the little 2 or 3% that was just affecting a couple of lost balls.
On the Scottish side, we mentioned they've had their line-out issues as well. And then it's been a common theme, particularly in Ireland-Scotland games over the last few years, that Ireland have really, really done a job on the Scottish throw.
Yeah. And again, look, you have to give credit to James Ryan. I think in the last couple of seasons, he's really, really evolved as he's obviously calling the lineouts now for Ireland, but I think his defensive presence is awesome. His like reading of the lineouts, getting up, disrupting ball, and even if he doesn't win it, his speed into position and his weight behind the ball is huge for Ireland. He mightn't be the biggest pack in the tournament, but you can look up against these France, South Africa's. That'll be crucial. So credit to the team. There's obviously two sides of the coin, attack and defense, and if JR can get up and nick a couple of balls, it'll be huge for the Irish team.
In fairness, just on that, I think it's an area. Dan's completely right. I think O'Connell, when he came in, put a huge focus on pressure in the air, and we are good at making reads. We are good at pressurizing the catch, and even in fairness, at the start of the Paul O'Connell era, we were actually giving away quite a few penalties for bumping in the air and kind of impeding the delivery, and we've kind of eased off on that a little bit, but are still very, very active. We're a team that want to get up, and it's different than the box, which were like they defend in blocks, so they defend in the middle and back. We kind of try and mirror a little bit better, a little bit more, which obviously gives you more options. You can pressurize the front ball as well, but it is an area we're quite good in, and I would say we have forced Scotland to be inaccurate at line of time when we've played them, rather than they've just bottled it.
Yeah, and also like if you look at the personnel that they'll have in those kind of defensive jumping, like O'Mahony is world class in defensive lineouts as well. Amazing spring, and you can even see it with Munster. He disrupts a lot of ball. If you throw in Tadhg, JR at the front, and O'Mahony moving around, it's a pretty potent three. So it's always, it comes back to the plan with these kind of things. You have to have a crystal clear plan. If there's any indecision, you miss the opportunity. So the fact that they do have that 2-week run up will kind of lend itself to, they'll have their homework done, and hopefully they can get up and disrupt.
Just on defensive line-out systems, Dan, when you were playing on a full line-out, where did you like to be in the line-out?
Out of the line-out.
Yeah, I know, but if you were ever...
Yeah, well, a couple of times, but like
tail gunner.
I used to get slagged. Yeah, I was.
I was trying to remember you. I was trying to remember a big steal from you, but I couldn't remember.
There's not many.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I honestly, I think in my whole career I ever got like 2 steals. They used to put me, if I wasn't off the tail, I was actually at the very back of the line out, so I just sit on the 50 and try and go. So thanks for bringing that up, Rich.
No, that's all right.
You mentioned Peter O'Mahony, obviously, and we're probably expecting he's going to be named in the squad in some description today, and if he does, that's going to be a 100th Irish cap for him. And I suppose I'd just be curious for both of you to get your thoughts on him. First of all, you, Dan, who would have played with him for Ireland, but also I presume against him quite a few times then as well in Leinster-Munster games.
Yeah, loads of times. I actually bumped into his old man in Paris. He was the solo O'Mahony over there because he was hoping, if they got through. I think there's the whole clan going over on the ferry to.
Someone has to stay back and mind the garden,
Get 15 or 16 of them heading over, which is great. I mean, Peter's an absolute legend, amazing player, super leader, and. Look, I think he's really, really grown even in the last few years. I think he's getting more and more well-rounded as a player. And credit to him, 100 caps is an amazing achievement. Again, knowing Pete and knowing the man he is, he won't really care about that. He'll want his spot in the quarters and a lot more than that as well. So credit to him, and I hope he has a fantastic day out. Yeah.
And Birch, like it says a lot about him the way he's come back in the last couple of years, where around 2001, it looked like Jack Conan had kind of taken that back row place and Caelan Doris would be at 6. But to O'Mahony's credit, he's taken a jersey back and he's forced his way back in there and now seems to be part of that first choice back row trio. Yeah,
I think we all were writing him off 2 years ago when Jack got ahead of him and he wasn't part of that first choice back row. And then I certainly was saying, well, is he a good impact player off the bench? Obviously from an old head and a defensive point of view, he is, but he isn't your typical impact player from a ball carrying or an explosive point of view. But to be like, if you take him and Bundy, like they both kind of found a new level of form late in their career, which is kind of unusual, and it's testament to them and the S&C and the coaches. And Pete, like the way Ireland play, Pete's often on the edge, and I would have said 4 or 5 years ago, he was maybe a liability there, or certainly he wasn't going to give you anything dynamic. And he's made himself into very capable there. Like he's able to get you go forward, but also he can pass pre-contact. He can offload now, and has kept all the other aspects of his game, which are, really tough, really good defensive line operator.
Over the ball.
Yeah, phenomenal. And I think it's class, and it's class to see like the Centurions, hopefully getting a really positive World Cup experience, which they haven't had up to now.
He seems genuinely horrible to play against, Dan.
Pete?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was fine. Like, obviously, it was always a Munster, so it was pretty fired up for everyone in the Munster team. So, yeah, look, he's he is a big leader. One of the things that's great when you play with him is just he's always in your corner and he'll always stick up for you. And I think, that's one of the things that's very nice about the team. I think it's well balanced at the moment. I think you've got, you're almost your enforcer there with Pete, who's quite vocal, and then Josh can kind of do his thing, and he's kind of a bit more of a, an introverted kind of, he wouldn't be particularly vocal and wouldn't be obviously a phenomenal player, but he probably wouldn't be the one starting fights and sticking up for people. So you've got a nice balance, and then Caelan is kind of a bit of both. But yeah, I think, in terms of to play against him, he's definitely always the talisman. Yeah, he's got a marker in his head, and play with him is great.
Well, another talisman, Johnny Sexton, still seems to be getting better, and as we head into the final handful of games at most that he's going to be playing in his career, like he doesn't look like a player who even needs to retire. Now, maybe his family might disagree with that. They might want to see a bit more of him. But it was funny something Mike Cat said in the press conference the other day, where, with the benefit of hindsight, Birch, they probably feel that obviously they didn't want Johnny Sexton to get banned, but with the way things have fallen into place, him getting a fine long pre-season to get himself fresh for a World Cup, avoids an injury coming into the tournament, gets to work his way through those games against Romania and Tonga. It's almost in a way worked out to Ireland's benefit. Yeah, no, it has. It's ironic, and probably, like, it was quite a serious injury he got against England, and obviously needed an operation. And knowing him and knowing what we kind of think is the right way to prepare for a tournament like that, you would have been saying, look, get some game time in August, to get up to match speed, test, etc. But that opportunity was taken away. That was taken away from because of the ban, and he's come in. And look, I wasn't surprised he'd be able to find his straps like straight away. I mean, he's well used to coming back from the cold and playing big games. But yeah, he looks in unbelievable shape. And the problem, the thing about Johnny is, even when his legs go, well, we'll probably never get to see that, but if his legs did go, his mind is so sharp, and his ability to see the game properly, like, he sees it better than everyone else. He's never wrong about the game, and he probably, like, to be fair,
He'll tell you that as well.
I know that, but he genuinely, like, I don't know how many times you've caught him out, Dan, but he genuinely is very, very rarely wrong. And he just has this. It's weird because we all play the same game, or have played it, we all see the same footage in opposition, but he just gets it. He gets it, and he's able to get people around him doing the things that they need then to make it work. It's like, I was lucky enough to play with, like, some really amazing players like O'Driscoll and Jason Robinson, etc. And they were all phenomenal players, and they got the game. But I think Johnny's at a different level.
I also think he had kind of a unique ability to he could miss whatever amount of games and come back in, and he's match fit and he's razor sharp. Not like particularly forwards. most people aren't able to do that. I remember Robbie Henshaw is another one you could just chuck in whenever, and he's ready for 80 minutes, and he's super sharp. So that definitely lends to, you know, the fact that he was injured at the start of the season. I was actually saying it's not bad. It's not the worst thing, because I think he was almost close to being able to run for the La Rochelle game. I think he was potentially running back then. And I said, look, this guy just needs to be in cotton wool. He'll be able to perform when he needs to. So even with regards to this weekend, if they can get ahead and get a couple of scores ahead, get him off the field, so he's definitely fit for what comes next.
A confident take. I like it. Last bit I want to ask you about, and as I mentioned, the Irish squad moving on from tour off to Paris today, and they'll be in Paris for as long as they're left in this World Cup. But one thing that's really stood out from being here in the last week is how often players and the coaches are speaking about how much they've enjoyed it here. And it seems to be a city that's been ideal for a camp like this, where they're just an hour out, you know, an hour and 20 minutes on a train outside of Paris. It's a city, so there's lots to do, but it's a small city, so there aren't too many distractions. You're close enough, as we said, to the big match venues you're going to, but you're quite outside of the World Cup bubble, and it seems to have just suited everything the Irish camp need. I'd be curious, Dan, like from tours that you would have been on, Australia with Ireland or Japan and USA the summer before, how much of an impact do those things have on just where you're based and the comfort levels for the players of being able to enjoy something but not have too many distractions and getting that right balance?
Yeah, I think it's important. Obviously, the World Cup's a completely different kettle of fish in terms of hype and interest from the general public. We weren't getting mobbed in our hotel in Tokyo anyway, let me tell you. Sorry, the first time. So yeah, look, I think they've hit the balance really, really well. It's a pretty quiet town from what I hear, and you know, they've got enough to do, but they're not in the hustle and bustle of the city and all the hype. And you know, I've heard reports of the French rugby team where there's, you know, media everywhere, the security everywhere, and Joe, it's definitely, in terms of pressure, you definitely would feel it, having been, you know, in that camp for so long and have, you know, not the scrutiny, but the whole country and nation, you know, following you around and everything. You definitely feel that a little bit. So I think Ireland have done really well so far. And credit to the kind of backroom staff for kind of picking that place.
Yeah, and it's funny, like you mentioned the security, you still see it's the same, tons of security around the Irish camp, but they're protecting them from nothing. There's like it's kind of it's about
protecting from you, mate.
Yeah, it's a couple of miles outside
the microphone trying to get interviews.
It's a couple of miles outside the city, and like it's a quiet little part of town. Sure, there's nobody around. There's hardly a car going up and down the street, but you've all the heavy police presence there. But anyway, it's on to Paris now, and hopefully the bed bugs don't catch us. We've all been nervously reading about them over the last few days. There's an infestation in Paris, but hopefully that's the worst thing that'll happen to Ireland and Paris this weekend. Final call, lads. Quick word predictions this weekend. How's it going to go?
Ireland by 10.
I'm going to say Ireland by 13.
Thank God none of you said Scotland by 21 and bonus points all around. Listen, it's been great, lads. Just a reminder for everyone, Ireland and Scotland live on RTÉ Radio 1 on Saturday night, full commentary with Michael Corcoran, and also a load of games coming up over the next few days on RT2 and RT Player. Thursday night, New Zealand against Uruguay. That's an 8 o'clock kickoff. On Friday, France against Italy, also an 8 o'clock kickoff in Pool A. Then on Saturday, a double header, Wales against Georgia and England versus Samoa. And then on Sunday, also a double header, you've got Tonga against Romania, 4:45 on RT2 and RT Player. And then Fiji against Portugal is the final game of the pool stage. Birch, it's been great. Thanks a million for joining us. And Dan as well. It's been lovely having you on, and best of luck with the venture and the new release.
Thank you very much. Oh, it's called out. We forgot the name there, and now you did.
I 100% did, yeah. I couldn't remember, was there an or in it? But listen, anyway, best of luck with everything. It's been great, fellas. And we'll be back on the RTÉ Rugby World Cup podcast next Tuesday.
The RTÉ Rugby World Cup podcast, Sponsored by Bank of Ireland.